Big time fight coming up this weekend in the lightweight division. We have T.Wrecks, Terrance McKinney taking on the smile killer, Ziam out of France. Can't wait for France, or at least somewhere close to France. I mean, hey, London's got a card coming up. You love to see it, but UFC over in Europe definitely needs a big time boost, and it's with fighters like the K1 kickboxer that is Ziam. What a fun guy to watch. And for Terrance McKinney, probably the best UFC debut ever. I mean, really, his win over Matt Frevola, kind of aging like a fine wine, but it has been a while since we've seen McKinney in the cage. And this fight right here was booked not that long ago, but the fight falls out. It's rebooked. We have an entire video about it. So we'll throw it on over to the original prediction video. We'll offer up the new odds and a final pick and prediction on this one. We had T.Wrecks, Terrance McKinney looking to make his Cam Newton return. I'm back, and he's coming back off of that crazy win in his debut. It was over in 7 seconds when he knocked out Matt Frevola. Then he got crazy with the end, and he T-wrecked his knee, so he's been off for a while. He's going to be taking on France's Ziam, a guy that personally I've been negative about in the past, but I think he's got some big X factors coming up, especially in a meeting with McKinney this weekend. This is a guy, he's coming from K1 kickboxing lineage, and if you look at it for Ziam, since he joined the UFC, yeah, you're going to lose to Don Madge, a PFL fame, but his last two fights against Jamie Mullarkey and Luigi Vendramini, both wins on paper. They were very close fights, and I can really give a conversation either way. However, when the fight is standing, Ziam can beat a lot of lightweights in this world, and he has a great opportunity coming up this weekend against Terrance McKinney. Both of these guys, I think, have very interesting ceilings in this division, too.
I couldn't agree more. And the great thing about Ziam is that, yes, those two past fights were really close, but the level of competition's pretty good. Like, Luigi Vendramini, okay, maybe public perception's not great of him, but still, if you know, you know. And if you know, he's a pretty talented fighter and a very well-rounded one at that. And we all know how good Jamie Mullarkey is. Like, he's extremely well-rounded, he's got great power. So, I do agree with you. Very close fights, but still, it's not like he's having close fights with guys who are fresh off Contender Series. Now, on the flip side, Terrance McKinney's one of the more interesting prospects in this division right now, because a lot of people will remember Paddy Pimblett gets his great UFC debut, looks great against Vendramini, gets rocked, knocks him out, and then people are saying, hey, does he have the best UFC debut of the year? Is he kind of the rookie of the year? And there was another UFC lightweight who was very open to disagreeing with that, and it was Terrance McKinney. He was like, hey, I knocked out Matt Frevola in 7 seconds. Why is nobody talking about my shine? And I think it is time to give Terrance McKinney his flowers, because he's shown an evolution in his game as of late, which has been really, really impressive.
Let's talk about it, because for McKinney,
that's what I was going to do.
Everybody just assumes that he's a guy that gets it done with his hands, right? Like, you look at those last 4 fights, done in 16 seconds, 17 seconds, a minute 12, and then 7 seconds, knocking guys out cold. Matt, what's his primary skill?
If you've been paying attention to the countdown this week, you'll know that his high school wrestling coach is on this card. He's been wrestling with guys like Michael Chiesa since he was in high school, and that really is the Terrance McKinney sort of back pocket trick, if you will. He can always go to his wrestling base. Now, is he one of these like JUCO national champion wrestlers? No. Is he a Curtis Blades type of wrestler? No. But is he someone who has really good MMA wrestling? Yes, and I really do think that's the key to this. You can't always look at a guy's accolades and all of a sudden think that that's going to translate to MMA. Like, Yoel Romero is probably a good example of that. Is he a good wrestler in MMA? Yeah. Is he the best MMA wrestler ever? Probably not, if we're being honest. Like, there's other guys out there who are better, even though he's the one with an Olympic gold medal. Terrance McKinney's another guy who sort of proves that even though he doesn't have the collegiate background or the wrestling or the Olympic background, he's got really good MMA wrestling, and it's going to be a big factor in this fight, because at range, Ziam's a guy who not only can put a lot of volume together, he's somebody who can start mixing in combinations early on in the fight. And if you're caught 6 feet away from him, because it seems like he can hit you from across the cage, it's going to be a really, really long night in the office for you, because you're so far away from him that it's really hard to get your entries on any of your strikes or your takedown attempts.
The craziest part about this, people will disagree. If this is the thing that's clipped out there, if this becomes a YouTube short, I might look stupid, but here's the deal. Ziam is a better striker than Terrance McKinney. Terrance McKinney's great at blitzing forward and knocking guys out. You saw that in his last 4 fights. Terrance McKinney is a better MMA fighter because he can mix in his wrestling, and when he does, and he's on, and he doesn't make any mistakes with his grappling, he's a great fighter. I mean, look at it. When he's fighting Sean Woodson on Contender Series, he's beating Sean Woodson. until he goes in, makes a dumb mistake, and then leaves himself totally exposed to a flying knee knockout for Woodson. Now, how good Sean Woodson, you might say? Well, he looked pretty good last weekend, I thought.
Tanks.
Just thrown to the body all day. So when I look at it for McKinney, you take that fight into account. Okay, he loses that fight. Then he goes out on a regional show. It's Contender Series against Contender Series. Derek Minner, Terrance McKinney. What does McKinney do? I'm going to wrestle. What does Derek Minner do? I'm going to submit him. And that's exactly what happened. So for McKinney, against very, very good primary grapplers, he might struggle with some of that jiu-jitsu, some of those in-betweens. Minner's a great guy in that respect. But when it comes to stringing everything together, that's what Terrance McKinney's great at. The trouble is, if you try and strike against a long-rangey guy and blitz in, we've seen what happened to him against a guy like Woodson. Ziam has a great opportunity to do something just like that. So in a fight like this, I have a lot of hesitations about going McKinney hard or going with Ziam quite hard as well. Because for Ziam, what's he struggled with? Third rounds against Luigi Vendramini? Takedown defense? Well, everybody knows that he's pretty well a pure kickboxer, so they just hammer away at the takedowns. Sometimes Ziam can grab one underhook and at least keep it up against the cage, but when he's stationary and he's striking from the clinch, he's at a giant disadvantage in his fights.
He really is. And the frustrating thing about Ziam is that his technique's good, his hand speed's good, his combinations are good. He doesn't really have great power on the end of his shots. I know he's got great striking acumen and a great striking background, but he's just not somebody who can go out there and really get one of those one-hit quitter knockouts. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens in this fight if McKinney has success early, especially with his strikes. This could be one of those weird Bizarro worlds where maybe McKinney gets a knockdown early and it's the worst thing that ever happens to him, because then he gets confident with his power and he is sort of just getting picked apart on the outside trying to set up another one of those big overhands. The flip side is, if McKinney can, and I think you set it up perfectly, just be that smart MMA fighter that we know he can be, then I think there's more than a big opportunity for McKinney to win. This is the thing that people got to remind themselves. The knockouts are recent. Like, they're a recent phenomenon. Now, that can be taken two different ways. Carlos Condit, before he went to the WEC, had a lot of submission wins against lower levels of competition. And for McKinney, some of that is true, to be completely honest, but McKinney is far more likely to take this to the mat out of these two guys. And I don't think Ziam can create separation. I guess that's the last thing I want to say. Ziam, like you said, is good at digging the underhook, but he'll just kind of sit there afterwards. You can hold him up against the cage with the underhook, and I do think that if McKinney doesn't just get discouraged after that initial takedown attempt, and if he does stay glued to Ziam, I think he's got a pretty good path to victory.
So the odds on this fight in the rebooking, the reshuffling, the rescheduling, they opened at par. Ziam, the slight favorite in this one right now, somewhere in the range of a minus 125. The comeback on Terrance McKinney, anywhere between a plus 110 and a plus 115. So you heard what we had to say about this one. Obviously, with Terrance McKinney, he wrestles with reckless abandon. He also strikes that way too. And for Ziam, a much more polished striker. Obviously, we saw that in the fight against Luigi Vendramini, but the kind of con to that one is he got taken down a fair amount in that fight against Luigi Vendramini, and he does tend to struggle with some of that takedown defense, but when it's on the feet, this guy is one of the most fun fighters to watch in this lightweight division. So overall, the takeaway, Matt, Ziam, slight favorite, McKinney, slight underdog. If we look at the votes on Topology, 628 total votes. They're going with the viral star. 76% of the McKinney, 75% by knockout. For the 24% that have Ziam, 72% by decision. So, Matt, you know, the final look on this fight, what are you thinking here?
This fight should be called, like, the Goldilocks fight, because for Terrance McKinney, range is really going to matter. If he's all the way out, Ziam's going to destroy him with his kicks. Going to go to the legs, going to go to the body, and really tire McKinney out. But if Terrance McKinney can box his way into the range, use his combinations, and land power shots up top, I think he's probably going to win by knockout. Like, Terrance McKinney has undeniable knockout power. He really does. A lot of people just look at his win at Matt Frivola, and they're like, okay, you knocked out Matt Frivola, who cares? He has multiple wins in under 10 seconds. Like, no, that's not a fluke. That is real legitimate knockout power. And I do think that if he lands on Ziam, he's going to put him away. So I will stick with the pick of Terrance McKinney.
And when I look through McKinney's record, again, he's got that loss to Sean Woodson. He was having success until he wasn't.
Yeah.
The fight against Derek Minner over with MFC. I had a great conversation with MFC's, the guy that's in charge of Midwest fighting. And after that, I was really impressed. You know, if there's a chance that we can make it down there, I would definitely love to go to a card. Having said that, McKinney wrestles himself into a submission, so it was unfortunate to see it that way. But in a fight like this, I will take McKinney, but I have to say, I mean, Ziam, again, when it comes to once he finds his range, it really can be over. It's just with McKinney, he has the X factor of the wrestling, and I really do like that in this fight.
And the thing about Ziam, he's a very skilled striker, but he's not a knockout striker by any means. I sort of lump him in with, I don't want to say Christoph Jotko, because Jotko is, like, he's not a knockout artist by any means, but with Ziam, it is a lot of volume. It is a lot of 1-2 leg kick. It's a lot of stuff that builds up over time. So if it ends early, it probably will be McKinney, but if it goes to decision, and if McKinney isn't able to get a lot of takedowns, I could see Ziam using a lot of volume striking and winning this by decision. So I think this will be a really closely contested matchup.
Big time fight coming up this weekend. Do you have Francis Fares Ziam, the smile killer, to get the win? Both of us going with T.Wrecks in this one. Terrance McKinney should be a great card. Tons of prospects on this one that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.